Did Ava Jerome honestly think she could just pack up Avery and vanish into the night without unleashing the absolute fury of Sonny Corinthos and the entire Port Charles police force? And what about Ethan Lovett? Does he truly believe that dragging an innocent child like Phoebe into a high-stakes game of cat and mouse with a mysterious, ruthless executive is going to end in anything other than a complete disaster? If you ask me, we are watching the foundation of a massive, town-shattering crisis being poured right before our eyes. The arrival of this enigmatic Hudson has sent shockwaves through the canvas, and the psychological motive behind Ethan's sudden urge to flee is practically screaming at us. He is a man backed into a corner, terrified of what his past is about to do to his present. But pulling Ava and two innocent children into this deadly equation? That is a calculated move that reeks of desperation. We have to ask ourselves if they have completely lost their grip on reality, or if Hudson is truly so terrifying that becoming international fugitives is their only logical option. If you look closely at the board, it looks like we are dealing with a highly dangerous deadlock involving some of the most complex characters on the canvas. Ethan Lovett has been harboring a massive secret regarding Phoebe's true paternity, a secret he deliriously confessed to Ava while bleeding out in her gallery storage room. Now, with the sudden and ominous arrival of this corporate phantom known as Hudson, Ethan is visibly spooked. This implies that Hudson is not just passing through Port Charles for a business meeting. He is a targeted missile aimed directly at Ethan's hidden life. Ethan likely realizes that staying in town will only put a massive target on the backs of the people he cares about. Instead of standing his ground and fighting a battle he knows he cannot win, he is choosing the path of a ghost. He is preparing to vanish. But the inclusion of Phoebe in this escape plan elevates the stakes from a simple disappearing act to a highly volatile kidnapping scheme. You have to wonder about the psychological motive driving Ethan to take such a drastic step. If you ask me, his decision to take Phoebe is rooted in a deep, perhaps misguided, sense of protection. Let us not forget his lineage. As the son of the legendary Luke Spencer, running from trouble and surviving on the edge of disaster is practically encoded in his DNA. For years, Ethan has managed to charm and scheme his way out of dangerous situations. But having a child changes the equation entirely. Could it be that Hudson is actually Phoebe's biological father, or a dangerous operative sent by the true father to reclaim the child? If that is the case, Ethan's entire identity as a father figure is under siege. By taking Phoebe and running, he is trying to preserve the fragile family dynamic he has built, even if it means breaking the law and shattering the lives of everyone left behind. Enter Ava Jerome. It looks like Ava is about to make one of the most reckless decisions of her entire life. We all know that Ava's maternal instincts regarding Avery are fierce, borderline obsessive, and heavily influenced by her ongoing fear of Sonny Corinthos. Recently, Ava was dragged into Sonny's deadly trap for Jen Sidwell, turning her beloved art gallery into a literal war zone. She watched Ethan take a bullet to save her life. That kind of trauma creates a twisted bond. If you ask me, Ava is looking at Port Charles and seeing nothing but a giant cage filled with predators. When she catches wind of Ethan's plan to flee from Hudson, she doesn't see a criminal act, she sees a golden ticket out of her own nightmare. It looks like she is willing to abandon her gallery, her status, and her complicated history to ensure Avery is far away from the mob violence that constantly surrounds Sonny. We have watched Ava Jerome fight tooth and nail for Avery since the day that little girl was born. Her history with Sonny Corinthos is a bloody, traumatic tapestry of custody battles, threats, and fragile truces. Let us not forget the deep psychological scars she carries from the tragic loss of her older daughter, Kiki Jerome. The sheer terror of losing another child is the driving force behind every decision Ava makes. When she looks at the current state of Port Charles, she likely feels that the city is a sinking ship. In her mind, taking Avery and fleeing with Ethan isn't a crime. It is the ultimate act of maternal salvation. But the tragic irony is that her desperate attempt to save Avery might be the very thing that traumatizes the child forever. But here is the chilling reality of Ava's plan. Taking Avery without the explicit consent of Sonny Corinthos and the courts is a direct violation of custody. It is, by definition, a kidnapping. The unforeseen fallout of this action will be absolutely catastrophic. You can already picture the shattered trust and the explosive rage that will radiate from Sonny when he discovers his daughter is missing. Ava is playing with fire, and she is holding Avery right over the flames. She might convince herself that she is protecting her daughter, but in reality, she is turning Avery into a fugitive alongside Phoebe. The Port Charles Police Department, the FBI, and Sunny's entire underground network will be mobilized in a matter of hours. The heat on Ethan and Ava will be unprecedented. This brings us to a fascinating crossroads in our speculative journey. How exactly does this four-person escape unfold? I believe we are looking at two very distinct possibilities for how this chaotic alliance comes together, each with its own set of dangerous consequences. Let us break down the narrative into two distinct paths, Scenario A and Scenario B. In Scenario A, it looks like Ethan and Ava form a calculated, unified front right from the beginning. In this version of events, Ethan approaches Ava with the truth about Hudson. He lays all his cards on the table, explaining the severe threat this man poses not just to Phoebe, but to anyone caught in the crossfire. Ava, recognizing the mutual benefit of pooling their resources, agrees to fund and facilitate the escape. This is a highly calculated move. Ava has offshore accounts, fake passports, and connections that Ethan desperately needs. Together, they meticulously plan their departure, slipping out of Port Charles in the dead of night with Phoebe and Avery in tow. This implies a deep level of trust between the two, a partnership forged in the fires of mutual desperation. If Scenario A plays out, the dynamic between Ethan and Ava will be fascinating to watch. They will be two outlaws trying to maintain a facade of normalcy for the sake of the two young girls. But the pressure of being hunted by both a mysterious corporate entity like Hudson and a furious mob boss like Sonny Corinthos will test their alliance every single day. Could it be that their shared trauma and close proximity will spark a genuine romance, or will the paranoia tear them apart? Furthermore, this scenario suggests that Hudson will have a much harder time tracking them down, as Ava's resources would allow them to hop continents, changing identities, and staying completely off the grid. Now, let us consider Scenario B, which is arguably much more chaotic and dangerous. In Scenario B, it looks like Ava's involvement is purely a crime of opportunity driven by a hidden ulterior motive. In this version, Ethan plans to leave town quietly with Phoebe, completely on his own. However, Ava discovers his plan at the absolute last minute. Feeling the walls closing in from Sonny's recent mob entanglements, Ava essentially blackmails or forces her way into Ethan's escape vehicle. She grabs Avery in a frantic panic and demands that Ethan take them with him, threatening to expose his location to Hudson if he refuses. This implies that their alliance is not based on trust, but on coercion and mutual destruction. If you ask me, Scenario B creates a powder keg of tension. Ethan would resent Ava for jeopardizing his clean getaway, knowing that taking Sonny Corinthos' daughter exponentially increases the heat on their trail. Ava, in turn, would constantly be looking over her shoulder, wondering if Ethan might trade her and Avery to Hudson in exchange for his and Phoebe's freedom. The psychological motive here is pure survival instinct, stripped of any loyalty. They would be forced to navigate seedy motels, burner phones, and constant fear, all while trying to keep two confused and frightened children calm. The unforeseen fallout in this scenario is that their internal conflict might be the very thing that leaves a trail of breadcrumbs for Hudson to follow. Regardless of whether Scenario A or Scenario B comes to pass, one thing remains absolutely certain. Hudson is not going to just throw his hands up and walk away. This man arrived in Port Charles with a specific mission, and a target fleeing the jurisdiction is not going to deter him. It looks like Hudson has immense financial backing and a network of operatives at his disposal. He will trace their credit cards, monitor border crossings, and perhaps even reach out to Sonny Corinthos to form an unholy alliance. Could it be that Hudson and Sonny will team up, pooling their vast resources to hunt down Ethan and Ava? The thought of those two powerful, ruthless men working together to track down the fugitives is enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. We also have to consider the ripple effects back in Port Charles once the disappearances are discovered. The Port Charles Police Department will be thrown into absolute chaos. Anna Devane, who has just reclaimed her position as police commissioner, will be facing the crisis of her career. She will have Dante Falconeri leading the charge, tearing the city apart to find his sister's child and Sonny's daughter. But the investigation won't just be local. If Hudson's corporate ties extend globally, Anna might have to involve the WSB, turning this into an international manhunt. The sheer volume of resources dedicated to finding Ethan, Ava, Phoebe, and Avery will make it nearly impossible for them to stay hidden for long. We also cannot ignore the heartbreaking reality of what this means for Phoebe and Avery. These are innocent children being ripped away from their homes, their routines, and their families. The psychological trauma of a life on the run, constantly moving in the shadows, will leave lasting scars. Ava might believe she is doing what is best for Avery, but the shattered trust of a child who realizes she has been taken from her father is a heavy burden to bear. And Phoebe, who is already at the center of a massive paternity secret, will have her entire world turned upside down if she discovers that Ethan is not her true father, and that the man hunting them is. Ultimately, guys, this entire situation is a ticking time bomb. Ethan Lovett and Ava Jerome are playing a high-stakes game of roulette with the lives of two little girls, and the house always wins. While they might manage to stay one step ahead of Hudson and Sunny for a few weeks, or even a few months, the past has a funny way of always catching up to you. If you ask me, this desperate flight from Port Charles will not end on a sunny beach with a happy family. It will end in a dramatic, tear-filled confrontation where secrets are violently exposed, and someone is going to lose everything. Whether it is Ethan losing Phoebe to Hudson, or Ava losing Avery to Sunny's wrath, the price for this calculated move will be devastatingly high. We will just have to keep watching to see exactly when and where the hammer finally falls.